I have a privilege and honor to present to you son Yisrayl Abel and Yahweh Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. The title of my speech is Yahweh's Way. Pastor told us that he was raised studying the scriptures, working on the farm, and so forth. He enjoyed this way of life. The world's way is entertainment, pleasure-seeking, making money. They have forgotten Yahweh's way. We need to stop wasting time and doing things that take us away from Yahweh. We need to spend our time learning and doing things that are beneficial. If you can turn over in your books of Yahweh to Ecclesiastes 10, verse 11, it's on page 521. Ecclesiastes 5, verse 10 and 11. It says, "He who loves silver will not be satisfied with silver. He who loves abundance will not be satisfied with increase. This is also vanity, meaningless. When possessions increase, so are they who consume them. Of what benefit is this to the owner except that he can see it with his own eyes?" So it's talking about how seeking after money and possessions will not bring true joy. In the first book of Israel, chapter 17 and verse 39, Pastor says, "We have it tougher right now than Samuel did. Samuel was guarded. We have it tougher than Yeshua did. I guarantee you, we have it tougher than he did. He did not have the pools that we have at us right now, and we were raised up with them. But it's up to us to get rid of them. It's up to us to get them out of our lives, out of our homes, to get rid of them, get back to the basics." If you can turn over to Matthew, it's on page 740. Matthew 13, verse 22. It's on page 740, and it says, "Now that which was sown among the thorns is he who hears the word, the law, and the prophets, but the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, the teachings of the law and the prophets, and he becomes unfruitful." So we can see here that Yeshua warns us that the things of this world can take us away from the house of Yahweh. In the 6th book of Israel, chapter 21 and verse 22, it says, "If your eye is righteous, that is, if you're looking for righteousness, if your treasure is in the word of Yahweh, then your eyes are going to be talking in the righteousness that Yahweh has given you here. And you're going to be understanding it and wondering, why didn't I set my heart on this before? Why did I wait so long to find what true joy is instead of wasting my time on men's entertainment?" Service is also another part of Yahweh's way, serving one another. Yeshua told us to wait for one another. Pastor explained that means wait on one another. Be servants to one another, like Yeshua, who gave us a perfect example. In the 14th book of Israel, part 2, chapter 20, and verse 98, Pastor says, "Now Yahweh's way is the way of work and service." That's what Yahweh did. Maybe that's the reason you see so much of it around the house of Yahweh today. Yisrayl Hawkins has taught us much about service. He is teaching us to get back to Yahweh's way so we can fulfill what it says in Genesis 1:26, being made in Yahweh's image. In the 6th book of Israel, chapter 10 and verse 28, Pastor says, "If you need to wash somebody's feet because they can't do it themselves, if you need to help them clean up, wash, iron, whatever it is, do it, whether it's working, building, learning, or whatever there is to do to get back to the basics that we've been preaching, learning the farming, the ranching, the chicken raising. Do it, yes. These are things that we're going to live off of throughout eternity. And we can see a glimpse of this way of life at the peaceful exhibit, this feast. It is a very joyful way of life. So in conclusion, I'd like to encourage you to keep seeking Yahweh's way, put away the worldly influences and distractions, and put all your effort into becoming like Yahweh. And now, if you all please stand, I'll turn it over to the son of Yisrayl Hawkins for prayer.
If you'll all remain standing, it's my great honor and privilege to present to you the great son of Yisrayl Abel, Deacon Shalom Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. In the 2016 calendar for the month of August here, if you look right there, it has the bus, and as you can see there, it has the phone number there. This is a green bus, and it has a phone number, and at the last it says Gony, or Go New York. And if you look that up in Gematria, it has three numbers: 497, 366, and 61. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today, are these three numbers here. And the first one is 366. It means to be sober. Well, I have the paper here. 366. It means to return to soberness, to regain one's senses, to become sober again. And sober, well, that's what it pretty much means. It comes from 3525, which means to abstain from wine, keep sober, be discreet, be sober, watch, to be free from the influence of intoxicants. And it has a few scriptures, and if you go ahead and turn to 1 Kepha, because that's what this number comes from. If you go to 1 Kepha 1, it's on page 957. Verse 13, it says, "Therefore, gird up the loins of your mind, be sober, and hope to the end for the undeserved pardon that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Yahshua Messiah. As obedient children, do not conform to the former lust you had when you lived in ignorance, but become as he who called you is holy, so you also become holy in all your conduct." It says, because it is written, "Be holy, for I am holy." And you can find that scripture in, if you turn to Leviticus 11, Leviticus 11, verse 44, it says, "I am Yahweh your heavenly Father. You shall therefore consecrate and sanctify yourselves, and you shall be holy, for I am holy. Neither shall you defile yourselves with any creature that moves about on the ground. I am Yahweh who brought you up out of the land of Egypt to be your heavenly Father. You shall therefore be holy, for I am holy. This is the law of the animals and the birds and every living thing that moves in the waters, and every creature that moves about on the ground. You must distinguish between the unclean and the clean, between the animal that may be eaten and the animal that may not be eaten." So it says there that be holy because Yahweh is holy. And we also heard something like that whenever Yeshua, he was talking in Matthew 5 verse 48, and he said, "Become perfect, just as Yahweh is perfect." All right, if you turn to 1 Kepha 5. 1 Kepha 5, it's on page 960. Verse 8 says, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom she may devour. Resist her by remaining firm in the faith, knowing that the same afflictions are fully endured by your brothers in the world. But may all merciful Yahweh himself, who has called us to his eternal glory in Yeshua Messiah, after you have suffered a while, perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you. To him belongs the glory and power forever and ever." Hallelujah, Yahweh. All right, so it's saying that to be sober or stand strong, it says resist her. All right, resist this, because remember, we're gonna have mental attacks here. All right, and it's these tests and trials, and we have to remember to resist the devil, and she will flee from you. All right, from the book of Israel, or the first book of Israel, chapter 20, verse 118, it says, Revelations 18, verse 3. "For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication." The reason she calls it the wine of her wrath is because she hates, It's because she hates what she sees being brought forth in the house of Yahweh. She hated it when she saw it in Abel, when she saw Adam and Eve leaning towards Yahweh's way. She hated it and came in to deceive. She hates the house of Yahweh in these last days. She would like nothing better than to see the house of Yahweh destroyed. All right, and if you remember how it was like 2 weeks ago, the future priest gave a sermon on how the microbes, or how Yahweh used the microbes to protect us whenever there was a threat, or whenever people tried to come against Yahweh's work. There was snow one time, and these things that stopped their plan. So Yahweh protected his people. It says, "But the house of Yahweh will not be destroyed." Yahweh shows he's going to protect it mainly because of his work. Because you have proved yourself to Yahweh, you have proved that you will not deny his name, that you will keep his laws. From the 12th book of Israel, part 2, chapter 15, verse 121, it says, verse 3, "For all nations," notice, all nations now, all nations are deceived. And remember in Revelations 12:9, it says that the whole world is deceived. Satan has deceived the whole world. Here it says all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. They're all involved in her sins. And the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have grown rich through the abundance of her delicacies. This is what it's all about. That's what the higher learning schools that bring you down to hell are all about. Repent and be converted. All right, so we have to remember that the whole world is deceived at this time. All right, and what this is saying here in Revelations 18:3 is that they're all involved in these sins. All these nations are involved in these sins. From the 3rd book of Israel, chapter 9, verse 72, it says, verse 3, "For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication." Speaking again of the same thing we read in Revelations 18:2 and Genesis 4:14. "And the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, are following her teachings, working with her doing this." This is exactly what is taking place now. All the governments are working with her. If you go ahead and turn to Revelations 18:3, it's on page 982. It says, "For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her." and the merchants of the earth have grown rich through the abundance of her delicacies. All right, so they're gonna turn from the world. They're gonna become sober, as what this number is showing us here, is that they're gonna be sober and come to Yahweh's house. Praise Yahweh. Remember, be sober or get pulled over. All right. The next number here in Gematria is number 497. All right, that's in Jewish Gematria, and it means to make war against, make war, and it comes from 4754, which means to contend, to fight, to engage in spiritual warfare, and it also means to contend with carnal inclinations. All right, and if you go ahead and turn to Daniel 7, verse 25, it's on page 679. It says, "And he will speak great words against Yahweh, and will wear out, mentally attack, to cause to fall away the saints of Yahweh, and think to change times, Yahweh's feast days and laws, and they will be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time." All right, so we're gonna have to put up a fight with these mental attacks. We're gonna have to go against them. Remember, resist the devil, and she will flee far from you. All right. And that's what this number is talking about. It's to contend with these carnal inclinations, all right, these carnal thoughts that we have. And if you remember, one of the speakers yesterday, they showed us a video of how when we think negative thoughts, or when we have negative thoughts, it actually destroys our brain cells. All right, and then the next number in Gematria here is 61, as you can see there. Oh, back to 4754. That was the number we were just on. Remember the Route 66, how the great Khan Benjamin has been bringing out some stuff on that. And if you remember the caterpillar with Pastor's face on it, I had a picture of that, but that picture, or the caterpillar, it turns into a butterfly. It goes through a few stages, and it turns into a butterfly. And can we go ahead and play the video? Alright, I don't know if you noticed it, but did you notice the gold, the green, and the purple? Alright, but here's a picture, and this is at the end point in Chicago, because remember, it goes from California to Chicago, and you can see Route 66 there, alright, and then you have the butterfly and millennium. And that P there could mean Pentecost, and you see the green. Alright, so we're going into this new age here. It's a transformation in Yahweh's house. Alright? Praise Yahweh. And the last number is 61, and it means to catch, hunting. It also means as bearing a crop. Alright, but if you turn to Luke 5 for my last scripture here. Luke, it's on page 786. Luke 5, verse 1, it says, well, let's start at verse 2. It says, then he saw two boats. This is talking about Yeshua. It says, he saw two boats standing by the lake, but the fishermen had left them and were washing their nets. So he entered into one of the boats, which was Simon's, and asked him if he could push it out a little from the land. Then he sat down and taught the people from the boat. Now when he had stopped speaking, he said to Simon, launch out into deeper water, and let down your nets to drag. But Simon answering said to him, Teacher, we have worked all night and have taken nothing. Nonetheless, because you say so, I will let down the net. And when he had done this, they caught such a great number of fish that their net was beginning to break. So they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. When Simon Kepha saw this, he fell down at Yeshua's knees, saying, Get away from me, for I am a sinful man, O ruler. For he was astonished, along with all who were with him, over the haul of fish which they had caught, as also were Jacob and Yochanan, the sons of Zabdiah, who were partners with Simon. Then Yeshua said to him, Do not be afraid. From now on, you will catch men. All right, so we're learning to teach, so we could start teaching these people who are going to come to Yahweh's house, and they also are going to become teachers. And with this, if everyone will please stand, I'd like to turn over to Son of Yisrayl Abel, Deacon White, Buffalo Hawk.
Shalom, everyone. You may be seated. The title of my speech today is Let Me Not Be a Part of Their Council. If you would please, for my first scripture, turn to Genesis 49. And verses 5 and 6 on page 43. It says, Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are weapons of violence. Let me not enter their council. Let my glory not be joined to their assembly. For in anger they killed a man, and for their pleasure they hamstrung an ox. Why I want to give this speech is to show you why animals were created, when it is acceptable to kill an animal, Yahweh's laws about the subject, and some acceptable instances when it was done. First, in Genesis 1, Yahweh tells us that he created the animals for us to eat and enjoy. That is the acceptable animals. And later, he gives us laws. Laws about which animals are clean and unclean.
In Leviticus 11, if you would turn there. Leviticus 11, and let's look at the last two verses, 46 and 47. It says, "This is the law of the animals, and the birds, and every living thing that moves in the waters, and every creature that moves about on the ground. You must distinguish between the unclean and the clean, every animal that may be eaten, and the animal that may not be eaten." So Yahweh gives us these clean and unclean laws to distinguish between what animals we can eat and not eat. In the Peaceful Solution, the Respect book, on page 190, in chapter 7, this is on page 190 of the Respect book, it says, let me zoom this in. It says straight talk. It says, "Hey, it's one thing to defend yourself against an animal that is trying to hurt you, or to hunt appropriate animals for food. But it is another thing to torture animals for pleasure. Keep in mind that all living things have worth and value. As the most intelligent species on the planet, we must also be compassionate and merciful towards others, and that includes animals. So don't take any part in any acts of cruelty towards animals, or allow someone you know to be violent towards an animal. Report any such behavior to someone in authority immediately." Some righteous men in the scriptures actually hunted and defended livestock. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to give you some examples. In Genesis 27, and verses 1 to 4 on page 21. It says, "Now when Isaac was old and his eyes were so dim that he could not see, that he called Esau, his older son, and said to him, 'My son.' And he answered him, 'Here I am.' And he said, 'Behold, now I am old, I do not know the day of my death. Now take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare me tasty food, just as I like, and bring it to me that I may eat, and that I myself may bless you before I die.'" So Isaac, which was a righteous man, he tells his son to go hunt game for him. In 1 Samuel, Samuel 17, and let's look at verses 34 to 36. This is around the time where the Philistine was challenging the Israelites to kill him. Verses 34 to 36. It says, "But David said to Shaul, 'Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or bear would come and carry off a sheep from the flock, then I would go after it, strike it, and rescue the sheep from its mouth. If it turned upon me, I would catch it by the hair, strike it, and kill it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be just like one of them, seeing that he has challenged and defied the armies of the living Father.'" So David is telling Shaul that he protects his livestock, his father's sheep. Now in Matthew 14, and let's look at verses 14 to 21. Now this ties in also to the last speech I gave about being able to control the microbes. But let's look at verses 14 to 21. It says, "When Yahshua went out, he saw a great multitude, and he was moved with compassion for them, and healed their sick. And when it was becoming evening, His disciples said to him, "This is a deserted place, and the day is almost over. Send the multitude away, that they may go into the villages and buy themselves some food." But Yahshua said to them, "They do not have to leave. You give them something to eat." But they said to him, "We have only 5 loaves and 2 fish here." He said, "Bring them here to me." Then he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed, broke, and gave the loaves to the disciples, and the disciples gave the loaves to the multitude. And they all ate and were satisfied, and they took the broken pieces that were left over, 12 baskets full. Now those who had eaten were about 5,000 men, apart from women and children. So Yahshua ate and he fed people fish. Now this fish had to be dead for them to eat it. It couldn't be alive and they swallowed it whole. No, they had to kill the fish. And of course, Yahshua went according to the laws that told them between the clean and the unclean. So Yahshua ate and fed people fish. If you notice here, it says that they all ate. Okay? And this also ties into him being able to control the microbes. Now in Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1, it tells us that there's a time for everything. So it should be done in moderation and for a moral purpose. From a sermon given in 5/27/2006, one of Pastor's sermons, it says in verse 6, it says, I thought this next article was kind of comical. They're telling you how to field dress rabbits for people who want to eat rabbits. Leviticus 11 tells you that you better stay away from rabbits and don't touch them when they're dead, nor eat them. Do you remember that it's also in Deuteronomy 14? Anyways, he says state and local health officials confirmed a positive tularemia test in a rabbit. Skipping a little, it says there was an article in some sports magazine about how to kill, clean, and field dress rabbits. It says one thing they told you to do was wear a mask when you skin the rabbit, along with rubber gloves to get the meat ready to eat. The article said to protect yourself greatly because you could catch this disease that used to be known as rabbit fever. You can catch this disease by preparing the food. Would you still eat it? That's what it was called by everyone in Oklahoma. Anyway, so these people, the confusion in the world, they tell you to wear masks and gloves to protect yourself against the diseases in the food you're getting ready to eat. Of course, we can't really call it food because it's not clean. Also, going a little bit more into the sermon, on page 83, it talks about hatred and Cain killing his brother. But it says, we see hatred in ourselves today, brethren, either a little or a lot. If hatred comes to your hand, if it was up in your mind, the first in the computer, if death comes out through your hand, as it did with Cain, whether it was by an animal or by a man, it was in your mind first. I'm referring to uncalled for death caused by you. It doesn't matter whether you kill a bird or an animal unjustified for no reason. Anyways, he says it starts with killing a mouse you didn't need to kill. The last verses I'm going to read here, it says, the only justification for taking a life is either for food or to prevent some kind of harm from coming to yourself, your family, or something else. Yes, a rabid skunk needs to be disposed of quickly. A goring bull needs to be disposed of quickly. Do you remember what the scriptures say about keeping a goring bull? I'm going to assign that to you as homework. It says, you have to add everything together to see the correct reasons for killing an animal. If an animal is not needed for food, it's not doing harm, it's doing some benefit. Why do you think Yahweh made mice to begin with? Why did Yahweh make cats? If a cat gets diseases, you can get them from the cat and it needs to be disposed of quickly in order to prevent the spreading of diseases. Those are the only causes you should have for taking a life, whether it's a bug or any animal. And this is the sermon where he says that he would not be a friend with anyone who kills anything for no reason. Well, with that, my time is up, and keep all these things we've learned in mind. And again, don't take part in any acts of cruelty towards animals or allow someone else you know to be violent towards animals. Yahweh created them for a reason. And with that, I would like to turn it over to the next speaker, the great Kohan Benjamin Krause Hawkins.
Shabbat Shalom, great saints of Yahweh. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. By the way, I better warn you, you better also stay away from worldly entertainment and Catholic bishops. You can get rabbit fever from them too. I think that's why they call them rabbis, short for rabbit. Okay, so I'm going to be talking to you today about a really, I think, a very interesting subject. We're going to continue on the exposing, along with our great teacher, the great Kohan Yisrayl Hawkins, and also Yeshua Messiah, who's inspiring him, and it all comes from Yahweh. We're going to be talking about a recent event that took place in the heavens. Another sign from the heavens, this time from the planet Jupiter. Now, I want to tell you, when you see the video I'm about to play, there's actually two parts to the video. The first part, I believe, is showing an incident where a craft was seen, some kind of object was seen by Jupiter's moon Europa. Europa, by the way, NASA says, is actually the best hope of life in our solar system. And they're actually they're wanting to send a mission to Europa to dig through the ice because they do believe life is there. Well, I do believe it was as well. But we'll talk about that after we play the video. So pay attention, by the way, to the numbers on these videos, the times that this was seen. An object slammed into Jupiter on March 17th. The craft was spotted about 3 weeks before that by Jupiter's moon Europa. But I want you to pay attention to the times that are given on the video because these two witnesses saw this in the heavens. They were amateur astronomers that actually took the pictures, the video. One was in Ireland and one was in Austria. Okay, so pay attention to the time code at the end of the video. If you could please play the video.
Hey, what's up, guys? Tyler here with Secure Team. We have a new image here that was just earlier tonight sent to us by a good friend of ours, Lewis Reed, our friend from the UK, who captured this amazing view of Jupiter and its moons. And as you can see in the image here, something immediately stood out to him that didn't fit, something that wasn't a part of Jupiter's moon system, this very anomalous object somewhere near Jupiter. Our friend Lewis, as did we, also compared the image using the SolarSystemScope.com model just to confirm that this is Jupiter, these are its moons, and this object should not be there in the image. Here we have an image where we increase the exposure, so we definitely have a reflective UFO up there, caught on camera. This is just an amazing find because this definitely looks like a structure to me. It could be multiple structures grouped together. One thing for sure is that it definitely doesn't belong, and it would not surprise me in the least if this was some sort of alien craft out there near Jupiter. Jupiter has long been shrouded in mystery along with its moons, particularly that of Europa. Which, if you'll remember, there has been a lot of scientific talk about alien life likely existing in the vast oceans that currently exist under its icy surface. Now, this is Europa right here, a moon of Jupiter, and this will likely be one of NASA's next missions. Hey, what's up, guys? Tyler here with Secure Team. As you just saw, something big has just impacted Jupiter. And it's been confirmed. Jupiter was struck by a celestial object. And in the video you just saw, you can see the small blip of light on the right side of the planet, which may look insignificant, but the resulting explosion was unusually powerful. So an amateur Austrian astronomer used a 20-centimeter telescope to chronicle the event. Because the small flash could have been the result of a technical issue, a second video taken at the same time with a 28-centimeter telescope in Ireland was used to corroborate the first, confirming the impact. Now, when you consider how massive Jupiter is, and by massive I mean that it can fit 1,321 Earths inside this gas giant, this small flash that you just saw on the right side suddenly gets a lot bigger, and it's actually probably the size of Earth, maybe a little bit smaller. So this is a major explosion. Something has definitely hit Jupiter. So now it's up to us to try to figure out what it was, and nobody knows, obviously, anything yet.
Okay, so you can see that something definitely hit Jupiter. Now that was on March 17th, World St. Patrick's Day, right? And you remember St. Patrick, what color would be associated with that day? Now you remember, just a few weeks later, there was seen these comets approaching the Earth, 2 comets. One was on 321, the other was on 322. They were emerald green comets. Y'all remember the sermons that were given on that. This was just 3 weeks later, okay? And it was, these comets made the closest approach to Earth of any comet since 1983, 33 years. Now, let me go back just a moment here. And this is from the dailymail.com. Conspiracy theorists, as they always call us, claim to have spotted an interstellar mothership near Jupiter's moon Europa. Now, I'm not going to get into the date on it. That was February 23rd, and I don't know when this was actually seen. It was just within those couple days. But let's pay attention to the time that this article was published. 1648. 1648 in Strong's Hebrew means, it has this word here, Gershon, and it goes to this name, Garash, which is 1644. And here's what it means. To drive out, to cast out. To drive out, dispossessed, dismissed, divorced, drove them away. Toss, like hurl, like cast down. That's 1648 in the Hebrew, and I showed you that's 1648 in the Hebrew. Now I want you to remember Jupiter's moon Europa is where this object was seen. And here's a Wikipedia article regarding Europa, who was also a goddess, okay? And this is in mythology. It says Europa was the mother of King Minos. And but this is really interesting here on page 2. It says there was some kind of argument about Europa. Like, who is she really? Who does she really represent? It says the paradox, as it seemed to Lucian, would be solved if Europa is Astarte. Europa is Astarte in her guise as the full, broad-faced moon. Well, because Europa means wide or broad. Wide or broad. Y'all remember the sermon about Times Square? Broadway? It means broad and face. Broad face or broad eyes. Wide or broad. Well, that's interesting because on every single page of our new calendar, just under pastor there, what do we see? The Europa Cafe. Under every single on every single page, just under pastor, you'll see this image of the Europa Cafe. just under the greatest teacher in the world, the great Kohan Yisrayl Hawkins, which, by the way, is on what? 7th and Broadway, right? 7th and Broadway, representing the crossing. And I don't have time to get into that today, but now 1643 was one of the times given on the impact of the Jupiter incident on March 17th. And here's what it means: a crushing. It means a crushing, or 1643 in the Greek means to drive or push. To drive or push. As wind, oars, or demonical power. Now, the second impact, and now these guys both seen it at different times, because one was in Austria, one was in Ireland. One of them that recorded it said it was 1845, which means it was 18 minutes after midnight where he was, and 45 seconds. And here's the meaning here. It means an exorcist. A caster out of evil spirits by the use of names or spells. An exorcist, a person expelling demons, adjuring them by using oaths, God formulas, or religious incantations. Now, I want you to remember these definitions, because this is going to become very important here in just a few minutes regarding all the recent articles in the news regarding demons possessing people. And these Catholic priests going around casting them out. As if Satan has any power to cast out Satan, right? Be total confusion, as Yeshua said. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But now, so a caster out of evil spirits. That's in the Hebrew. Here it is in the Greek. It goes from 1845 to 1844. And it means completely out from. Completely out from. To cast completely out from. Okay? I need you to follow that, because it's very important, because we're going to turn to Revelation here in a minute. Why don't you go ahead and turn to Revelation 12, so you'll have a jump ahead while I'm getting this next one ready. Now, I want you to know that this news came out about the object hitting Jupiter on 3/29. It did not come out on March 17th. Okay? It came out in the news on 3/29. Here's one of the articles here. March 29th, 2016. It says, mystery object crashes into Jupiter. And this particular article came out at 12:56, and it talks about that incident. I'm not going to go over it again. It did say, though, it caused a very, very, very big explosion. Okay? 256, by the way, is this word here. Y'all remember Ahab and Jezebel? Y'all remember that story? Ahab, the false prophet. Y'all remember that? I thought this was really cool for those of you that says here, you can go to this website, demonbuster.com, right? And no demons allowed. They got it. It says the curse of Ahab and Jezebel. You know, if you have the curse of Ahab or Jezebel, they'll cast the demons out of you for you. If any of you would like. Now, no, nobody here would do something foolish like that, right? Because they're not casting them out, okay? You're going to find out what they're really doing. 256, that's in the Hebrew. Here's in the Greek. It means Alphaeus, and it's from this Hebrew word, chalef, it says. So we're going to go to that word. And here it is, 2501 in the Hebrew, Strong's, Halef. And it means change. Change. And it see this word right here, chalef. So you go here, and it means changed. It means to pass on or away. To change, changed, move past. Wasn't there a sermon yesterday about moving past or moving forward? Pass on or away. To go on forward. To change, to cut off. Now notice this. It's used in Isaiah 2:18 where it talks about utterly abolishing the gods. Utterly abolishing the gods. The idols will completely vanish. The gods will be utterly destroyed. They will be no longer. Okay, this is all part of what Yahweh's doing right now and before our very eyes. And by the way, I got to show you this picture because it ties right in with this. This was taken over Laredo on April 17th at 6:56. And what you're looking at right here is a man with a diviner's hat on, and you can see the serpent on the top of it. And he is looking in this black thing right here, doing divination. And he's talking to demons, because you'll see an outline of a face here as well, because this is who they're working with. They're playing with demons. The divining serpent on the 7 hills of Rome is playing with demons. They've been playing with them. Now that 6:56, the time it was taken, means to cease, fail, come to an end. And I just want to show you right there again, it was taken at 6:56 p.m. Cease, fail, come to an end. Who do you think that's talking about? I can't hear you. It means be clean, gone at an end, brought to nothing, fail, to disappear. Yeah, you can clap. Yahweh's confirming these things with signs. By the way, here's the first article I saw about Jupiter getting hit on March 29th at what time? 6:13. Hey, that would be a sign, wouldn't it? That's from space.com. And by the way, there's the confirmation of that one time that meant Exodus, 1845 UT time. I want to make sure I get all the pictures. And again, there's the definition. Remember, it meant an exorcist, caster out of demons. Okay, let me continue. Now, this article from the Daily Mail says, watch the moment Jupiter gets hit by an asteroid. Amateur astronomers capture rare event 600 million miles away. It says on March 17th, object crashes in the side of Jupiter emitting bright light. This article is March 29th at 1608. So let's look at 1608. 1608 in Hebrew is this word here, and it means a quaking. From the Hebrew word gash, and it means to shake, to quake. Do y'all remember the prophecy about I'm going to shake the heavens and the earth? Y'all remember that, right? There's going to be a shaking. And the only thing that's going to remain after that shaking is what? That's right. The righteous will remain, but the unrighteous will not remain. It means to shake, shook, stagger, toss. Like toss away, hurl, cast down. And it means also to agitate violently, trouble, move, shake, toss, trouble. That's 1608 in the Hebrew. Now here's 1608 in the Greek. This is very interesting. Pay attention. 1608 means I am guilty of fornication. I am guilty of fornication. It means to give oneself up to fornication. Remember the great Kohan Yehuda sermon in Yada verse 7. Giving themselves over to fornication, going after strange flesh, talking to demons. Is there not a law against this? Yes, there is. Also means gross immorality and indulged in gross immorality. Well, who would that be? It wouldn't be the house of Yahweh. We teach moral character here in the house of Yahweh. So it can only mean one other tree. It must be that tree on the city of 7 hills. Now, this article came out the same day on March 29th. Remember, at this point, I didn't know anything about Jupiter being hit, because that came out on March 29th. But this article showed up on the Drudge Report the same day. It says, exorcism making a big comeback and big news worldwide. Imagine that. And notice it was taken at 11, the news report was posted at 11:41. Well, that should ring a bell. That should ring a bell. Right? But I'm going to read a couple things before I show you the definition. It says the Catholic News Agency. Well, let's see. Let me make sure I don't miss anything. The Catholic News. Now listen to this. The Catholic News Agency in the United States recently published an article describing how to recognize a demon-possessed person. It's from March 17th is when the article came out. Remember when Jupiter got hit? And the article came out about 5 hours afterward. Now listen to this. The only way to tell the difference, Father De La Moya says, is through a personal revelation to the priest and the reaction of the patient to prayer. You know, like if a Catholic prays around you, your reaction will determine whether or not you're demon-possessed. I don't know about you, but I run from that. I don't want to be around that. So I guess, you know, according to their definition, no, but I don't have a demon, and I guarantee Yahshua was accused of having them, wasn't he? So why wouldn't we be? Now listen to what else he says here. There's no lack of, this is what he says about the demon-possessed. There's no lack of frightening facial expressions, threatening words or gestures, and other things. But especially, listen to this, blasphemies against God and Our Lady, which we all stand guilty, do we not? Now here's 1141 in the Greek, and it means demon-like. Demon-like. And it's from 1142. Remember the super confessors? 1,142 of them that were sent out, right? To go cleanse and liberate the people. Liberate them from the demons. Oh, blessed condition. Free from the law. Yeah, right. Now look at here. It's from the Greek word daemon. And it's from 1140, means an evil spirit, demon, a heathen deity. An evil spirit, demon, emphasizes the evil nature of fallen angels. And it may stress the pervasive presence of demons in the world. 1142. Now, here's that article they were talking about that came out from the Catholic News Agency. How can you tell if someone is demon-possessed? Okay, you ready for a quick course? By the way, this was March 17th, 2016 at 6:01 a.m. 6:01, write that down, 6:01. Well, I'm going to tell you how you can tell. I've already told you blasphemies against God and Our Lady, but there's some other things too. Here, Catechism offers further guidance on how to avoid demonic activity. Anything that involves recourse to Satan or demons, or that attempts to conjure the dead or reveal future events. Hello? Do they not pray to the dead? Do you see the confusion? Consulting the dead. They're telling on themselves. Now listen to this. From paragraph 2116 in the Catholic Catechism, it says, consulting horoscopes, astrology, palm reading, now get this, interpretation of lots. Interpretation of lots. I stand guilty. We all stand guilty, right? We've been trying to interpret a lot for quite some time. Okay, now it says, the phenomenon of clairvoyance and recourse to mediums all conceal a desire for power. Yeah, we want power. And it says, We want power over time, history, and in the last analysis, other human beings. We want to control them. But I'm going to show you who's really controlling them. As well as a wish to conciliate hidden powers. They contradict the honor, respect, and loving fear of what we owe God alone. "601 is when that article went up, and it means Yahweh says, I bring to light, and I reveal. Does he not reveal the hidden things? And it says to make plain, manifest. Remember the meaning of 2016, this year. To make manifest, to bring to light. This is the year of light, right? Also, here's what else it means. 601 in the Hebrew means an ceremonially unclean bird. Write down Revelation 18:2, okay? As I move along here. It means an unclean bird. Is not the Catholic Church a cage of every foul spirit and every demon and every hateful and unclean bird? Revelation 18:2. And it goes to 599, which means angry. But not just angry. To be angry, become angry, and it also means enraged. You see, they're right there. To be enraged. Well, who do you think that might be? Anybody here? Oh no, but I guarantee you Satan is enraged right now with the house of Yahweh. And I'm going to show you why. Turn over to, you're already at Revelation 12, right? Okay, great. You're ahead of me. Okay, I'm there now. Let's look at 12:1. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And now the great Kohan David, Yisrayl Hawkins, has already gone over this a few weeks ago regarding pastor's mother in the house of Yahweh. And it says, verse 2, and she being with child cried out, laboring in birth and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon her heads. Now look at verse 4. And her tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to the earth. Now, that word drew, it's word number 4951 in the Greek, and it means to drag or force away. But look what else it means. It means to hail. Remember hail bop? Satan was cast down in 97? 19 years ago? Oh, well, the comet. Satan was evicted in 94. There was a war in heaven. But remember, 97 is when Hale-Bopp arrived. March 22nd, it made its closest approach. 322. Y'all remember that? Y'all remember that? Y'all remember the skull and bones number? Yeah, that's just a coincidence, right? It means to hail. Hale-Bopp made its closest approach to the earth. If you remember, I showed this last time I spoke. On March 22nd, 1997, Earth's the closest approach. Hail, remember? Man, this all just must be a coincidence. But now get this. 12:4 says, and her tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to the earth. Now skip down to verse 9. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. She was cast out into the earth, and her angels were cast out with her. But now they were not cast out at the same time. Pastor revealed this to me. Satan was cast down, but the demons were still there. And I'm going to prove it. Because that word after, or that word with her, it means after. That's why there's a comma there. Because they were cast down later. And when do you think that was? Could it be March 17th? Could it have started a few weeks before that with the whatever was off to the by the Jupiter's moon Europa there? What do you think? Speaking of demons, Pope Francis, you know, he talks a lot about the devil. He's an expert on the devil. Okay? I mean, after all, it's his boss. I mean, you know your boss pretty well. Now, the Pope blesses the work of exorcists. This is back in 2014, 28 October 2014. Now, he created what's called the International Association of Exorcists. He created it. Okay? It didn't exist before Pope Francis came. He created it. And guess when he created it? 6/13/14. June 13th, 2014. But that's not all. Now, this is going to be in a Roman or Italian language or Latin language, so you're not going to understand this, but you will understand this. That's I'm going to show you this in the English, but I want you to notice this. It's canon number 322 in the Catholic canon. 322. Look at that. Now, I'm going to put it in English because I had to take this from the Roman paper it came from. This is from July 2014. Here's what it actually says. By decree of 13 June 2014, the Congregation for the Clergy has legally recognized the International Association of Exorcists, according to Canon 322, and look at this, Canon 116. Remember the end of the age? Remember that number 116? Just keep focused on that. Do y'all remember the big hailstorm we had? Does anybody remember when that was? No, the big hailstorm in Abelin a couple years ago. Just for your reminder, it was June 12th of 2014, one day before that this came out. One day before this canon was created, canon number 322. We had that big hailstorm. But something else remarkable also took place, and I'm not going to get into all of it today. I don't have time. I'm just going to kind of lay a little groundwork here. Something else was taking place on June 13, 2014, while Pope Francis was creating canon number 322 and 116, creating the International Association of Exorcists. The bridge that Pastor was born under, the James Nance Memorial Bridge, it's also known as US 77 and State Highway 39. And when you add those two together, you get 116. Okay? Write that down, 77, US 77, and 39. It goes over the bridge. You know how some roads become 2 or 3 roads until they've split off again? Now on January, there was a closure of this bridge where Lexington and Purcell were cut off for 5 months. Can you imagine that, where 2 cities are cut off? It caused huge financial trouble for both cities. But notice, the bridge was reopened on June 13th, 2014. The same day that Pope, and I'm not going to explain all this to you today. I'm just going to give you these dates. This bridge was repaired and opened on June 13, 2014, the same day Pope Francis was creating the International Association of Exorcists. Here is the actual canon itself from the Catholic canon, the Code of Canon Law, 322, and it just says, a private association of Christ's faithful can acquire judicial personality, or they can be created by a formal decree of the competent ecclesiastical authority mentioned in Canon 312, which would be Pope Francis. He's able to make and create such laws or such entities. And then there's 116 right here, basically saying the same thing. Oh, by the way, for anybody that wants to take a course on demon, this guy here, I don't know if he's the same guy I've seen before. One of them says they've drove 160,000 demons back to hell since he's been a priest. He's counting them, you know. He's counting them. He's got a lot of notches under his cross. Rome offers Jubilee year course in exorcism and demonic possession. And here's what they're going to teach you to do. They're going to teach you this prayer of liberation. Promising you liberty while they're servants of what? Corruption. They can't offer you liberty. Promising liberty, but they're servants of corruption, as 2 Kepha 2:19 says, for your notes. And this guy, he's the head of the International Association of Exorcists. Now we got another IEA to deal with. I think, isn't that an atomic agency or something? We've got all these acronyms. But let me get to this. Because speaking of the year of liberation or the Jubilee of Mercy, y'all remember the Jubilee of Mercy that we're having? I'm sorry, not we're having, but Pope Francis is having. Y'all remember this? Y'all remember this Jubilee of Mercy? Here's their official logo. Here's their official logo. Now, I'm getting ready to tell on them. Are you ready? Are you ready for Yahweh to reveal secrets to the house of Yahweh? Okay, I'm just going to get started today. I can't tell you everything. But I'm going to tell you, they're really, really mad right now. Okay? But I don't care. Do you? Are you afraid, house of Yahweh? No! All right, now look at this logo here. Because the other night, let me set you up for this. I called Pastor and I said, Pastor, what do you think was with all this demon thing? You know, because we know they're not casting out demons. They work with the demons. And Yahshua said if Satan cast out Satan, she'd be divided again. Her kingdom couldn't stand. Right? And he says, remember, he was accused of casting out demons by the power of Beelzebub. Right? So, let's look at this. Because I asked Pastor, I said, what do you think is with this? And he says, you know what? He says, I believe what they're doing. Now, y'all know about the all-seeing eye, right? Y'all have heard of the all-seeing eye of Horus, the Egyptian god Horus on the back of every dollar bill. But did you know what it really is? Can I show you? You see that brain right there? This little thing right there is called a pineal gland. It's pronounced pineal. You remember Jacob, the story of Peniel, and he saw God face to face? Boom! You know, he saw the light. I can't get into this because it has to do with something that's very, very filthy that the Catholic Church does to children. But I want you to notice this here. This is called Jacob's ladder. There's 33 vertebrae in your back, in your spine. 33, leading up to here where that pineal gland is, that they activate through their dirty work. And you know, there's a bunch of people out in the world that have this third eye. And they know their names and they know their addresses and they've been using them for a long time. But now you're fixing to see some things you ain't never seen. Now, I want to look at that Jubilee of Mercy logo again. Because Pastor, as soon as he said it, I thought, I know he's right. And then I went and looked at my paperwork and I already had it here. Here it is. Remember the third eye? One, two, three. See, we can count to three, right? Okay, now watch this. It gets a little more interesting here. Here's upside down, and you'll see the number 113. What could that mean? Y'all remember what occurred on April 22nd this year? 175 nations. April 22nd is the 113th year this year. It's a leap year. Pope Francis came on September 22nd to America. September 22nd to January 13th is 113 days. Judas Iscariot betrayed Yeshua on the 13th day of the first moon. Turn over to Hadassah chapter 3, because another wicked thing took place on 113. The extermination plan for the Yadaim. And they cast lots for 13 moons to try to figure out when to do this. The evil plot against the Hebrews. Look at 3, verse 12. Here's when they created the letters for the extermination of the Hebrews. Then the king's scribes were summoned on the 13th day of the first moon, and the decree was written exactly as Haman had dictated. This global warming plot, climate change, they're going to try to murder the house of Yahweh. Will they prevail? Will the gates of Baal prevail? Remember the 175 nations that signed on? Look at this. We heard about this yesterday from the great stars of Yahweh as well. It means barren, unfruitful, without fruit. Remember that tree that doesn't bear fruit? What did Yeshua say occurs with that tree that doesn't bear fruit? It's cut down and it's thrown into the fire. My last thing here, last night, have a lot more on this, but last night, a green fireball was caught on camera as it headed toward the earth in this video here, which we'll show eventually. Last night, and this article actually, the number on it was very interesting. It means suns cut down, suns cut off. A green light hurled to the earth. And man, I got so much more, but my time is up. But may Yahweh bless you. And let me tell you, Satan is going to try everything to destroy the house of Yahweh, but saints of Yahweh, the gates of hell will not prevail against the house of Yahweh. And the demons, they're here, and you're going to see a big increase in activity, because the Catholic Church is going to make sure they activate the third eye. May Yahweh bless your understanding. And at this time, if you'd all please stand, I'd like to turn it over to a great priest in Yahweh's house, the great Kohan, David Hawkins.
Shalom, everyone. It's an honor and privilege to address the called out ones of the house of Yahweh. You may be seated. I'd like to talk to you today about parables that Yeshua gave concerning the fig tree. Okay. I'd like to begin with the title of the sermon, Now Learn the Parable of the Fig Tree. And this, of course, was a parable that Yeshua, our great high priest, gave to his disciples. And so this parable, Matthew 24, 32 to 34, I'd like to begin reading here. Now learn the parable from the fig tree. When its branch becomes tender and puts out leaves, you know that summer is near. And we can all picture that in our mind, vegetation, fruit trees. We can all picture that in our mind, but it goes a lot deeper than that. In verse 33, Yeshua said, in the same way, when you see all these things, know that his coming, of course, Yeshua's coming, and the end of the age, that this end of the age, that we're nearing this end of the age, is near at the very door. Truly, Yeshua said, I say to you, that generation will not pass away until all these things are fulfilled. And Pastor has been writing extensively in the Prophetic Word magazine, the newsletters, about his generation, which began in 1934 And this is the generation that's spoken of here that will not pass away until all things are completed. So the next slide I'd like to show you, to set up a pattern here. It's the divisions in the life of the prophet Moshe. From birth to age 40, he was trained in the house of Pharaoh as a prince of Egypt. And from the age of 40 to 80, he fled into the wilderness to the house of Yahweh. He was trained at the house of Yahweh, studying under the priest Jethro. And then from age 80 to 120, leading the 12 tribes out of Israel, out of Egypt, leading the 12 tribes of Israel out of Egypt. And it was said about Moshe in Hebrews 3 verse 5, now Moshe truly was faithful as a manager in all the house of Yahweh as a testimony to those things which were to be spoken after. And we can read the life of Moshe, the great things he did, how Yahweh worked with Moshe, just like Yahweh is working with his last day's witness, Yisrayl Hawkins, at this very time. So the prophet Moshe's life was divided into 3 divisions of 40 years for a total of 120 years. Now, Pastor had a dream, and it's recorded in the 12th book of Yisrael, part 1, page 18, verse 59. It was about the white stone. And these are Pastor's words in verse 59. The next day was the 28th. Now, that wouldn't mean anything to me at all, he said, but if you remember, I saw a white stone. And this, of course, he's talking about the white stone, the judgment of acquittal. And I told everyone about this, and I had the date of when I told everyone, but I hope you remember it. And that white stone had 3 numbers. One of them was 28. One of those was 28, so it was 17, 28, 74. I think I was 74 at the time when that stone was shown to me, and it came into my mind, or was placed in my mind, this is your lot, Yisrael. In other words, your sentence of acquittal. This next slide here, following after the pattern we saw in Moshe's life, this is the divisions, I call this divisions in the life of Yahweh's last day's witness, Yisrayl Hawkins. Now this is one of the numbers in the pastor's dream. Birth to age 28, so 28 years, 1934 to 1962, raised in the ends of the earth, the wilderness of Oklahoma, and taught to love Yahweh's holy scriptures. And then from age 28 to 56, 28 years, brings us up to from 1962 to 1990. This is the time when Pastor worked with Jacob Hawkins, his brother, the other witness, they began opposing Babylon in 1962 with their broadcast from Eastland, Texas, and the 2 witnesses working together established the house of Yahweh. Now, notice this period ends in 1990, and Jacob died that following year, in the spring of 1991. The third division of 28 years, age 56 to 84, and Pastor's going to be 82 this fall, or on August 28th of this year, 1990 to 2018. But notice this generation is not going to pass away, as Yeshua said in his parable, until all things are completed. So the house of Yahweh escaped to the wilderness, the cleansing of the house of Yahweh, and this message of the kingdom will be preached to all the world by the one who bears witness to all nations, and the kingdom of Yahweh established. So that's in this time period. So the witness Yisrayl Hawkins' life divided into 3 divisions of 28 years for a total of 84 years. So now let's go back to Matthew 24, verse 32. Now, learn a parable from the fig tree. Now, right now, today. Yeshua's words, now learn a parable from the fig tree. When its branch becomes tender and puts out leaves, you know that summer is near. So first of all, what is a parable? A parable, and Yeshua told many parables, but a parable is a similitude, a fictitious narrative of common life conveying a message or conveying a moral. And it comes from word 3846, and it means to compare alongside or to throw alongside, but it's a comparison. And it means to liken or to compare. And a simple definition here from Merriam-Webster dictionary is a short story that teaches a moral or spiritual lesson. And they go on to say, one of the stories told by Yeshua and recorded for us, for our learning, in the book of Yahweh. Now, Yeshua's disciples in Matthew 12, verse 10 through 12 for your notes, then Yeshua's disciples came to him and asked, "Why do you speak to them in parables?" And Yeshua answered and said to them, "Because it has been given to you, the saints of Yahweh, to his disciples, and to you in this last generation, to know the great secrets of the kingdom of Yahweh. But to them it has not been given. For whoever has, more will be given to him, and he will have abundantly. But whoever has not, even what he has will be taken away." That is why Yeshua said, "I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand." So Yahweh calls us out, and He works with us, and it is for our learning, these words of Yeshua that He brought forth in these parables. So Matthew 24:32, when the branch becomes tender. Now, who is the branch? Who is Yahweh's branch in these last days? Yisrayl Hawkins, we've been taught extensively these prophecies regarding the branch. The word branch, it means a twig or a bough, and goes on to say here, as if broken off, and we're going to cover that in a scripture we're going to cover in Yechezkel 17, verse 22. And this first prophecy here that we've covered many times in the house of Yahweh, Zechariah 6, verse 11, "Take the silver and gold and make crowns and set them upon the head of Yeshua, son of Yahweh, the high priest. Speak to him and say, this is what Yahweh of hosts says, behold the man whose name is the branch. For he, Yisrayl Hawkins, will branch out from his place, and he will build the house of Yahweh. He, Yisrayl Hawkins, will build the house of Yahweh, and he, Yeshua, will bear glory and will sit and rule on his throne. He, Yeshua, will be a priest upon his throne, and the council of peace will be between Yeshua and the branch, Yisrayl Hawkins. When the branch becomes tender, Zechariah 3, verse 8, hear now, O Yeshua, the high priest, you and your companions who sit before you, for they are men wondered at. For behold, I will bring forth my servant, the branch, Yisrayl Hawkins, another prophecy in Zechariah. And Psalm chapter 80, verse 14, gives us another reference to the branch. Return, we entreat you, O Yahweh of hosts, look down from heaven and see. Visit the vine, Yeshua. Yeshua is the vine. And verse 15, and sustain what your right hand has planted. And the branch, Yisrayl Hawkins, you strengthen for yourself. So Yahweh is the one who's strengthening our pastor and overseer, Yahweh's last day's witness, Yisrayl Hawkins. And Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1, there will come forth a rod, Yeshua, out of the stem or out of the lineage of Yeshi, and a branch, Yisrayl Hawkins, will grow out of Yeshua's roots. So another prophetic prophecy regarding the vine and the branch, Yeshua and Yisrayl. Matthew 24:32, when the branch becomes tender. I asked Pastor one day, I said, what does it mean now? Pastor, you're the branch. And what does it mean when you become tender? And he said, well, he thought for a minute, he said, I've been tender and green all my life. And I thought that was a wonderful answer. I'd like to cover some of the prophecies that talk about this becoming tender and what it means. When the branch becomes tender, the word tender, Greek word 527, it means soft. But let's look at what the prophecies say about the witness, Yisrayl. Revelation 3, verse 7, and to the Malak, Yisrayl Hawkins, of the congregation of the house of Yahweh at Abelin, write, these things says he, Yeshua, who is holy, he, Yeshua, who is true, he, Yeshua, who has the key of David, he, Yeshua, who opens and no man shuts, and shuts and no man opens. I know your works, Yisrayl Hawkins. Behold, I have set before you an open door. No one can close this door that's been set before Yahweh's last day's witness and Yahweh's last day's house. It cannot be done. Babylon cannot shut this door. For you have a little strength. And I think that's the key to understanding the word tender. Yisrayl Hawkins, you have a little strength. You have all the strength that you need to do this work in these last days, and have kept my word and have not denied my name. I hope everyone can see this. The printing is the font is a little bit small on this one. But this is Yeketskis 17, verse 22. And Yeketskis 17:22 is a wonderful prophecy having to do with the house of Yahweh in these last days, Yeshua and the branch. So Yeketskis 17, verse 22. This is what Father Yahweh says. I will also take a shoot, Yisrayl Hawkins, from the highest branch, Yeshua Messiah, of a high cedar, and will plant it. I will crop off, and remember what we read earlier about a branch. Part of the definition was to crop off. I will crop off a tender shoot, Yisrayl Hawkins, there's that word tender, from the topmost branch, Yeshua Messiah, and will plant this tender shoot upon the high and eminent mountain. And I've added there the chief of the nations, United States of America, an eminent mountain. Now this verse 23 is interesting also. In the mountain of the height of Israel, I will plant it. Well, in the mountain is the United States of America. That's this mountain. And what this means, in the height of Israel, it means the uplifting of the branch, the uplifting of the witness Yisrael. So that it's not the nation Israel. Yeshua said to the woman at Samaria, behold, the day comes when Yahweh will not be worshipped in this mountain nor in Jerusalem. So this prophecy here in the mountain of the height of Israel, or the uplifting of the witness Yisrael, I will plant it in this great eminent mountain, the United States, and it will bring forth branches and bear fruit. We are the fruit of his teaching, and be a majestic cedar. And this next sentence here also shows what time period we're living in. Every bird of every wing will dwell beneath it. In other words, every person in this entire world has the opportunity to dwell under this eminent tree that is being taught here at the great house of Yahweh. Every person of every nation will dwell, and eventually they will. They won't have any other choice after Babylon falls. Every bird of every wing will dwell beneath it. In the shadow of its branches they will dwell. And all the trees of the field will know that I, Yahweh, have brought down the high tree, Babylon, and exalted the low tree, the tender tree, Yisrayl Hawkins, the house of Yahweh, and have dried up the green tree, Babylon, and have made the dry tree, the tender tree, the house of Yahweh, flourish. We're going to see this, brothers and sisters. We're going to see this. This is very close now. I, Yahweh, have spoken. and have done this. Yahweh speaks as if it's already completed. The word tender one here, this tender shoot, it means tender-hearted. It means tender-hearted. And it comes from the word to soften. So, but notice in 23, in the mountain of the uplifting of the witness Yisrayl. To prove that point, in Isaiah 49, it speaks of the witness Yisrayl. In Isaiah 49, verse 3, and he said to me, you are my servant, O Yisrayl, through whom I will be glorified. And in verse 6, and he said, it is not enough that you should be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob, and to restore the protected of Israel. I will also give you as a light to the Gentiles, so you may be my salvation to the ends of the earth. Every tree, every bird of every tree will dwell under this tree here at the house of Yahweh. In verse 8 of Isaiah 49, this is what Yahweh says, in an acceptable time. In other words, according to Yahweh's perfect plan, in an acceptable time, I have heard you. In the day of salvation, I have helped you. I will protect you and give you as a covenant to the people to restore the earth and cause to inherit the desolate heritages. Other prophecies regarding the word tender in that parable, Zechariah chapter 4, verse 6, it says, so he answered and said to me, this is the word of Yahweh to Zerubbabel, which means he who opposes Babylon, saying, not by power, not by might. So it's tender. It's a peaceful approach to spreading the message of this kingdom, not by power, not by might, not by power, but by my spirit, says Yahweh of hosts. Who are you, O great mountain Babylon? Before Zerubbabel, Yisrayl Hawkins, you will become a plain, just like was done to Tyre. It was a great mountain, a great city, and after Alexander the Great got done destroying it, it was a plain. And he will bring out its capstone with shouts of blessing upon it. The hands of Zerubbabel, Yisrayl Hawkins, have laid the foundation of his house, and his hands will finish it. This generation will not pass away until all things are completed. His hands will finish it. For who has despised the day of small things? Another reference to the word tender in that parable that Yeshua gave us. The day of small things. A small group, relatively small group, but doing a mighty work under the direction of Yahweh's witness Yisrayl. They will rejoice and will see the plummet in the hand of Zerubbabel, Yisrayl Hawkins, and the complete knowledge and understanding of Yahweh will go throughout the whole earth. Then I spoke to him again and said to him, what are these two olive branches? There's that word branches, which through the two golden pipes empty the golden oil through them. And he said, these are the two anointed ones, Yahweh's two witnesses who worked together during that second 28 years, Yisrayl and Jacob Hawkins, who stand for the supreme ruler of the whole earth. Continuing in Yeshua's parable here, when the branch becomes tender and puts out leaves. The word leaf means sprout. It means a leaf. And it's an offshoot, that is a race or a clan or a congregation, a house of Yahweh. And the two scriptural references I've got for this, Revelation 22, verse 1, and he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding from the throne of Yahweh and of the Lamb. And in the middle of the street, on either side of the river, was a tree of life. And Pastor talked about the tree of life in Yeshua's memorial, which bears the 12 fruits and yields her fruit every moon. And the leaves, notice the leaves of the tree, the leaves of this tree, when the witness puts out leaves, when the branch puts out leaves, were for what? The healing of the nations. The teaching of the law, the teaching of the peaceful solution is for the teaching of the Yahweh's prophecies is for the healing of the nations. And Jeremiah 17, verse 7, blessed is the man who trusts in Yahweh and whose hope is in Yahweh. That's us. That's us, brothers and sisters and children. For he will be like a tree planted by the waters, which spreads out its roots by the river, and will not fear when the heat comes. When summer comes, we're not going to fear. We're not going to fear when summer comes. When that summer comes. It's a specific summer. When the heat comes, its leaves are always green. You know, the man who trusts in Yahweh, his leaves are always green. He's keeping the laws of Yahweh. He's believing the prophecies. He will not be worried in the year of drought and never ceases to yield fruit. The green leaves, this is from the 2015 calendar, and this calendar is a work of art. I hope you saved your copy. The green, it means learning, understanding, a time of great growth and unity and love in the house of Yahweh. We've got to get to that point, brothers and sisters. We've got to be in total unity, and we need to love each other. We need to keep the laws of Yahweh perfectly in our conduct with each other. Growth and practicing righteousness in the upper right-hand corner of the slide there. The color green represents a time of great growth in learning and understanding in the house of Yahweh. We have grown in unity and love through the attitude of servitude by keeping the Sabbath day as Yahweh kept it on the seventh day of creation and still keeps it today. The practice of righteousness is what makes us righteous. Continuing in Yeshua's parable, now learn the parable from the fig tree. When the branch becomes tender and puts out leaves, you know that summer. This is talking about a specific summer. You know, the parable says, it talks about vegetation year by year. Yes, we know that summer follows spring. But this is talking about a specific summer. The word summer basically means heat. You know, when the heat comes. The scriptures, if you look at Malachi 4, verse 1, for behold, the day comes that will burn like an oven. And this is what is being referred to here by the summer. And all the proud, yes, all who do wickedly, will be stubble. The day that comes will burn them up, says Yahweh of hosts, and it will leave them neither root nor branch. And also in 2 Kepha 3:10, but the day of Yahweh will come as a thief in the night. In other words, it's going to be unexpected. The world is not going to expect the destruction that's coming. They're aware of the danger of the world situation, but they trust that Babylon has a cap on it all, that they have the ability to control it. But this is not. They're going to find out this is not true. But the day of Yahweh will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. Now, this next slide is a side note from the book of Yahweh, talking about the elements, and it basically means the elements of God worship. The instruments they use to determine the solstice and the vernal equinox, by which they set their holiday celebrations by. And deception concerning Yahweh's calendar of events is part of the reference here. This next parable, you know, Yeshua, he also covered a parable regarding the barren fruit tree. The barren fruit tree. And in Luke 13:6, Yeshua then spoke this parable. A certain man, Yahweh, had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came and searched for fruit on it, but he found none. Then he, Yahweh, said to the dresser, Yeshua, of his vineyard, look, for 3 years, I've come looking for fruit on this fig tree. I've searched for fruit on this fig tree, and I've found none. Cut it down. Why should it go up using the soil? Let's make room for one that does bear fruit. Verse 8, but he, Yeshua, answering, said to him, ruler, leave it for this year only. You know, for this growing season also. Leave it for this year also. And I will dig around it and fertilize it. In other words, we're going to have more teaching from Yahweh's witness, and we're going to have an opportunity to continue growing in the faith. Then, if it bears fruit, verse 9, that is well. But if not, after that, you may cut it down. So, Yahweh, Genesis 2, verse 8, Yahweh planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. For what purpose? To grow into the knowledge of Yahweh, to keep the laws, to be perfect and righteous and upright like Yeshua Messiah, and to come in, be made in the image of Yahweh. I'd just like to read this to you. It's a wonderful description of the maturity of fruit of the fig tree. It comes from gardenguides.com. I'm just going to read it, and you can get a picture in your mind, put it in your subconscious, and you'll see the scriptures coming to life. But maturity is the last phase of the growth stage of a fig tree. As a fig tree continues to mature, a strong bark develops so it can bear the weight of the fruit. With the fig tree's reproductive structure established, the fruit growing cycle begins. The fig tree's first fruit crop appears in the spring, followed by a second harvest in the fall. Some fig tree varieties are self-pollinating, while others require the help of pollinating wasps. Fruit production takes place inside the synconium, where a cluster of small flowers are pollinated in the green fruit bulbs. In essence, the fruit blooms inside the fig fruit. The wasp enters the fruit and pollinates the flower so the fruit can grow seeds. The resulting fruit features a tough outer peel, usually green, brown, or purple in color, depending on the type of fig tree, and once ripe, the peel cracks, revealing the pulp and the interior flesh of the fruit. Okay, this next slide here, continuing with Luke 13:7, then Yahweh said to the dresser of the Yeshua of the vineyard, "Look, for 3 years I have searched for fruit and found none. Cut it down. Why should it go up using the soil?" But Yeshua said, "Ruler, leave it for this year also, and I will dig around it and fertilize it." I find it interesting that back in March 13th of 2013, Jorge Mario Bergoglio was elected Pope. He took on the name Pope Francis as the King number 8, the man of sin, the king of fierce expression. He fits all of these prophetic definitions, every one. He's inaugurated into the office of Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. He's made to appear in the midst of the time of trouble. Pope Francis begins 42 months, 3.5 years of war against all holiness. And then just last month, he celebrated his 3rd year in office. So he's been waging war against the house of Yahweh for 3 years. Going on the last 6 months, Pope Francis celebrates 3-year anniversary of date he was elected Pope of the Catholic Church. And 42 months, his license to deceive the world expires on August 30th, 2016, this fall. Completion of Pope Francis makes war against the saints for 42 months. And then we've got the Day of Atonement on the October 11th of this coming fall. So the parable of the barren fruit tree, I'd like to, you can see the scripture there, and I've read it already, but look in the middle of the slide there. Yeshua is instructing, he's giving us direct instructions right to us. He's talking to us. Yeshua is instructing the house of Yahweh that we have only one more season. Leave it for this year only to finish overcoming sin. 3 years are now completed. Only a half a year remains. Leave it for this year also means that we have only this feast circuit remaining. And if you look at the scripture here, Psalm 19 verse 6, Yahweh's going forth with his plan. His going forth is from the end of the heavens, and his feast circuit to Kufa, to their ends, and no one is hidden from his wrath. And that's what the scripture reads. And it means after this present, and this scripture applies to us in that after this present feast circuit is complete, no one will be hidden from Yahweh's judgment, because we know that the judgment is coming upon us. It's coming. The time of our conversion has an end date. And I would ask us to consider that we've got one more feast circuit to work out the kinks. Verse 7, the laws of Yahweh are perfect, converting the whole person. The testimony of Yahweh is sure, making the simple ones wise. This slide here, it talks about Revelation 12, verse 6. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared by Yahweh, that they should feed her 1,260 days. Now this overlays with the 42 months that Francis is waging war against all righteousness, all holiness. And it's this time period, the 3.5 years, they come up with different numbers, 3.5 years, 42 months, 1,260 days. It's talking about the same time period, the time we're in right now, and we've got 6 months left. But the court, Revelation 11:2, but the court which is outside the temple, leave out, measure not, for it is given to the Gentiles, and the holy city they will tread underfoot 3.5 years. And I will give to my 2 witnesses to perform their prophetic offices, and they will foretell events about the 3.5 years, those cast about with darkness. The darkness of sin, the darkness of war and death that we see on the news almost every Sabbath now. Revelation 13:5, and this is talking about Pope Francis. And power was given unto him to make war for 42 moons. And he's just completed his 3rd year in office. This next slide, in Matthew 24, but back a couple verses from the parable. Therefore, when Yeshua speaking to us, therefore, when you see the Lord of heaven, the abomination of desolation, Pope Francis, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. So we've seen that. We back in March of 2013, Francis began standing in the unholy place, the city of Rome. And notice what Yeshua is telling us. We see this. No other generation has seen this, brothers and sisters, children. Yeshua says, then let those who are in Yada, which means those who are in the faith, in this time period, it means those who are keeping the laws of Yahweh, those who are called, those who understand that the house of Yahweh has been established. Then let those who are in Yada flee into the mountain. And the mountain, what mountain is it talking about? Isaiah 2:2. It will come to pass that the mountain promotion of the house of Yahweh will be established in the chief of the nations, and will be raised above all congregations, and all nations will eventually, yes they will eventually flow to it. And there's Revelation 12:6 again, and the woman fled into the wilderness. According to the words of Yeshua, he's the one who said, flee into the wilderness for 3.5 years, where she has a place prepared. This place began to be prepared in 1991. And so basically 21 years later, we entered into this 3.5 year time period. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by Yahweh. Yes, she certainly did. And that they should feed her 1,260 days, 3.5 years. Back in 2013, when this man came to office, This was a Prophetic Word magazine from May of 2013, a month and a half after he took office. Pastor asks the question, of what likeness will Pope Francis be? And now we can clearly see what likeness he's in. He's in the likeness of Babylon, the likeness of the beast. That's his likeness. We've seen everything he's done to war against holiness. He is a rock star of the gay community. That's the likeness he's in. And here we see this ongoing war for 42 months. The Vatican versus Yahweh's last day's witness in the house of Yahweh. That's the battleground, brothers and sisters. That's the battleground. There isn't any other. This is the important battle that's going on. All these others are just diversions. We can get sidetracked on diversions, but please don't. Focus on our overcoming and building up the house of Yahweh. So here we see Pope Francis 3 years later, and Yahweh's last day's witness, Yisrayl Hawkins, the branch. And the caption at the bottom here, the gates of hell will not prevail against this house. I'd just like to bring out one other prophecy that Yeshua spoke to us in Matthew 24:20, where he said, "But pray that your flight will not be in the winter nor on the Sabbath day, for there will be great tribulation, such as has not come to pass since the beginning of the world to this time, nor ever will be." Now, just a word of caution. If we're ever caught on traveling to the house of Yahweh, there are many brothers and sisters who come to the feast, but then they return to their homes. If you're traveling to the house of Yahweh under a stressful situation, I have a couple travel tips for you. It's based on my own experience. I experienced the tornado that went through Moore, Oklahoma in 2013. I was trying to travel through Oklahoma City on that day, and so 2 years ago, the Moore, Oklahoma tornado disaster. When you're traveling, occasionally listen to the news situations for local news updates. This is the main point. This is the main point right here. If a city on your route has been affected by a natural disaster or an act of war or terrorist attack, immediately find an alternate route around the city. Do not attempt to go through that city. Roads and facilities in a city affected by a natural disaster are reserved for emergency personnel and emergency equipment. People are dying in that city, so we need to find an alternate route. Do not try to get through that city. The Boston Marathon bombing, when they were looking for these fugitives, they had an order not in the city not to leave their homes. They shelter in place. That's what they told them. So if we're traveling to the house of Yahweh under a stressful situation, don't try to go through cities that have experienced acts of war, natural disasters, or that type of thing. And also, emergency personnel are not always up to date. So if you stop and ask somebody who's directing traffic, can I go this way, can I go that? They're not going to know. They might send you the wrong direction. So have a map in addition to your cell phone, which may have run down by then or whatever. But anyway, emergency personnel are not always up to date on disaster developments and are not a reliable source for advice. How do we flee to the house of Yahweh if we're not able to travel here? We can flee to the house of Yahweh to get the information on Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, and Yahweh'sBranch.com. We have the ability, with this increase in technology in these last days, to get all the information that the house of Yahweh puts out. We can get ourselves ready, as the prophet Jeremiah was instructed. Get yourselves ready, even if you're not able to physically come here right at this moment. But these are wonderful, awesome websites where we can get all the information, instruction, and training, even if someone is not able to come to the house of Yahweh at this time. That generation will not pass away until all things are fulfilled. We read the parable that Yeshua taught us about the fig tree. In verse 33, in the same way, when you hear all these things, know that his coming and the end of the age is near, at the very door. Truly, I say to you, that generation will not pass away until all things are fulfilled. For my last slide, Revelation 3 verse 20, behold, I, Yeshua, stand at the door and I knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I, Yeshua, will come into him and will eat with him at the marriage supper of the Lamb, and he or she, children, everyone who overcomes with Yeshua. To him who overcomes, I, Yeshua, will grant to sit with me on my throne, as I, Yeshua, also overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the called out ones of the house of Yahweh. And of course, Yochanan 6:63, it is the Spirit that gives life. The flesh is useless. The laws that I speak to you, they are spirit, and they are everlasting life, or life everlasting. Brothers, sisters, children, Yeshua is at the door. Is everyone listening for his knock? May Yahweh bless your understanding. I turn the services over for closing prayer.